All right, Sarah, are we live streaming now? Sarah, can you confirm that the live stream is going?
Yeah, we are live, yes.
Okay, over to you, Marcote.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order our joint Mayor's Council and TransLink board meeting. Welcome, everyone. Today is obviously a big day with respect to consideration for the region's long-range transportation plan. It's also the first time since 2018 that the TransLink board and the Mayor's Council have met together formally. We have had workshops over the years and working through the difficult past couple of years, but this is the first time the two bodies have come together. So welcome to both the Mayor's Council and the TransLink board for joining us. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded and traditional territories of the Halkomelem, Semiahmoo, and Squamish-speaking peoples. These refer to the language groups of that more widely encompass the Indigenous people of many nations who use and continue to use the land whose territory TransLink works, operates, and serves. As the TransLink board and Mayor's Council, we recognize the importance of doing our best to build relationships that contribute to stewarding the land, the waters, and the community with the integrity and consideration for future generations. So with that, we will move forward with the agenda. I do want to ask Carol, are you able to confirm the attendance of both the TransLink board members and the Mayor's Council?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair Cote.
Okay. With that, we will just move to the adoption of our agenda today.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, that brings us to item 2.1 on the agenda, which is Transport 2050 strategy. I think everyone in this meeting knows the long journey we've gone through the development, and I think this is obviously a big day for the TransLink organization, but a big day for the region there. We have done updates over the years on our long-range plan, but this is the first major update that's happened in this plan since Transport 21 was developed in the 1990s. So obviously a lot of work has gone into this. I'd now like to pass this off to our CEO, Kevin Quinn, to introduce Transport 2050.
Okay, Chair Cote, thank you so much. And we're so excited to be here because today is truly an important milestone for the region. And I'm very excited to be before you presenting the new regional transportation strategy, Transport 2050, to the Mayor's Council and TransLink board for approval. This document meets the requirements in the South Coast British Columbia Transportation Authority Act to update a long-term strategy for the regional transportation system every 5 years. Next slide, please. As you know, Transport 2050 has been in the works since 2019 and was developed through our largest ever public engagement. And we've spent hours in workshops and meetings with you and with the public working to get this right. While TransLink has led the development of Transport 2050, I want to note that this strategy isn't for TransLink alone. Transport 2050 recognizes that no single entity can get us to the transportation future that we want. It will require collaboration, coordination, and cooperation to shape the future of how we move and how we live. Presenting this strategy is a pivotal moment in the trajectory of the region as we are on the cusp of major change. We're facing significant technological changes in the mobility landscape, social and economic challenges, including navigating the ongoing recovery from the pandemic. And of course, we're confronting one of the most significant collective challenges of our lifetime, the climate emergency. Transport 2050 provides an immediate response to the present with a bold and optimistic vision for our transportation future. This is really a crucial moment in time. And that's because the choices that we make today will influence how we move and how we live for decades to come. At the outset of drafting this strategy, you asked us to think big, to consider the role of new mobility in the transportation landscape, build a solid vision with concrete actions, and have a central focus on the customer. Most importantly, the strategy needed to echo the voice of the region. And I couldn't be more proud to deliver a new regional transportation strategy that does just that. Next slide, please. Transport 2050 envisions a future of access for everyone, where every person in Metro Vancouver, no matter who they are, where they live, or how they choose to get around, can easily connect to the people, to the places and opportunities that they need to thrive. And we built this strategy over a foundation of 3 strategic lenses. First, reconciliation, to advance better relations with Indigenous nations and peoples, which begins with acknowledging historic injustices. Second, social equity, so that we can foster a more just, inclusive, and fair transportation system that addresses the systemic barriers people face when traveling. And third, resilience, so that our region can better withstand and bounce back from disruptions and uncertainty and whatever the future may bring. To help create the future we want, Transport 2050 sets out 5 goals that will set the direction for the regional transportation system: convenient, reliable, affordable, safe and comfortable, and of course, carbon-free. Next slide, please. So we've identified over 100 actions to improve transportation for the people who live, work, and play here. And many promise to transform how we move in the future, such as quadrupling the size of the rapid transit network from 100 to 400 kilometers, building out an 850-kilometer traffic-protected major bikeway network, creating more people-first streets that prioritize walking, biking, rolling, and transit, promoting electrified and shared bikes, scooters, and cars, and putting frequent transit within a short walk of nearly all homes and jobs. The regional transportation strategy responds to residents' top priorities, such as climate change and affordability, and will create more transportation options for everyone. Next slide, please. I'm really proud to say that this detailed strategy was built from our largest ever public engagement between 2019 and 2021. We've connected with communities at 360 in-person or virtual events across 27 communities and municipalities, visiting every municipality in the region prior to COVID and even reaching out to surrounding areas. We had over 160,000 conversations with the public and over 500 stakeholder groups. And these were groups representing transportation, business, environmental, Indigenous, and other communities. Over the 3 phases, we received upwards of 38,000 survey responses and 4,000 ideas. And I want to note that we made a special effort to reach out to groups who are typically underrepresented in transportation decision-making, such as people from disadvantaged groups, low-income and newcomer communities, people who don't speak English, and people with disabilities, for example. We also formed an Indigenous advisory committee and a youth advisory committee to ensure we heard from these important voices. Next slide, please. At the end of the day, through our 3-phase engagement process, we can confidently say we're delivering a regional transportation strategy that people strongly support. In the final phase of engagement, we shared a draft of the strategy, and the results were impressive. 75% of people were supportive of the strategy, and 80% were supportive of the proposed rapid transit expansion. Next slide, please. Of course, this could not have been possible without the support of the people of Metro Vancouver. We thank them for sharing their thoughts, their ideas, and opinions along the way, and every voice was considered in finalizing this plan. This is a shared strategy for the region, which was developed in close coordination with Metro Vancouver, including the Metro 2050 and Climate 2050 teams, and all of the governments represented here today on the Mayor's Council. We also want to thank the province for their strong support and collaboration as a senior partner throughout this process. And of course, we could not have developed such an ambitious strategy without the incredible leadership and unwavering support from you, members of the Mayor's Council and TransLink board, who really challenged us to think big at every step of the way. Regional consensus and collaboration were really critical in developing these plans and will be critical in implementing them as well. Next slide, please. I want to close just by emphasizing that Transport 2050 is not the finish line. And later in today's meeting agenda, Sarah Ross will be providing more detail on the work that's underway to advance the commitments that are made in T2050. And following today's meeting, we'll continue working on a detailed implementation blueprint. This work has been underway and will allow us to get started right away on bringing transportation improvements to the region. I want to thank you all so much for your time and for your efforts on this really critical project. And Chair Cote, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin, and to all of your teams that have worked so dedicated to the development of this plan. In your comments, I think you made it clear that although TransLink has been the lead organization in developing this really is a transportation plan that encompasses the entire region and many different stakeholders. I think one of the important partners that had to be at the table in the development of this plan and will have to be at the table for the implementation of this plan is our partners with the provincial government, and they've played a significant role in partnering with us. With that, we do have two ministers joining us here this morning, and I'd like to introduce both Minister Heyman and Minister Ma to make some remarks.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I guess I'll go first. It's a pleasure to join you today from the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I want to really extend huge congratulations to everyone who was involved in making the Transport 2050 plan possible and bringing it to this point, whether it's staff, board members, mayor's council members, the many individuals and organizations who took place in the extensive engagement. Minister of State Bowen Ma and I had a chance to participate and do on an ongoing basis in the Policymakers Coordination Forum, where we worked with regional partners to ensure that Transport 2050 priorities, particularly with regard to climate action, affordability, equity, and reconciliation, aligned, and our priorities in the province aligned. We know that accelerating the mode shift to low carbon transportation like public transit is absolutely critical to achieving our climate action targets, not just the provinces, but yours, and building a better future for everyone. It's why last October we launched our roadmap to 2030 as the second iteration of Clean BC to expand and accelerate our work to meet our climate targets and to fill in the gap that we left in 2018. And to ensure that we build an economy that's working toward 2030, 2040, and a net zero future. In the roadmap, we envision compact urban planning through commitments to increase transit and active transportation to 30% and reduce vehicle kilometers traveled by light-duty vehicles by 25% by 2030. And by 2050, with a goal shared with Transport 2050 plan, we aim to have 50% of personal trips made by transit or active transportation. That's why we're going to continue working with TransLink, the federal government, Vancouver, Surrey, and everyone in Metro Vancouver on improving and expanding our public transit systems, like the Broadway subway line, like the Surrey to Langley SkyTrain, and more. And it's also why we joined with the federal government for $676 million through the Safe Restart Plan, so people can continue to have the essential transportation services they need during the pandemic, and TransLink can continue to operate those services without cutbacks. We know we're on a bit of a knife edge. We need to maintain services to bring in revenue, and if we don't do that, we'll fail. So together, we look forward to working with you in partnership with Indigenous peoples, with local mayors, with the federal government to meet our GHG targets to build a cleaner and stronger future. And I know the Transport 2050 plan is a significant and important part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Heyman. We'll now go to Minister Ma.
Thank you so much, Chair Cote. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here from the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh and share in this momentous occasion that is effectively the culmination of years and years of extensive public input and collaborative work at all levels of government. It has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege of mine to work with TransLink as a senior partner on this plan, first as Parliamentary Secretary for TransLink, and then as Minister of State for Infrastructure. This is a really exciting roadmap for the future of public transit in Metro Vancouver. And we know that Transport 2050 will support our vision of having one of the most modern and expansive public transportation systems in North America. As Minister Heyman has already noted, some of this work is already underway, like construction of the Broadway subway project and early works for the Surrey-Langley SkyTrain. With Transport 2050, though, further contemplating a SkyTrain extension to UBC, rapid transit to the North Shore, and more. This is really an exciting time, absolutely. And investment in public transit is a top priority for our government. We also appreciate, of course, as Minister Heyman has noted, the vital role that public transit plays in reducing carbon emissions and generating a more equitable British Columbia. These kinds of projects and these kinds of systems create opportunities for transit-oriented development, affordable housing, links to active transportation amenities like cycling and walking trails. And the benefits that we will see from this kind of work are multifold. Better affordability, more equitable access across the region for people of all walks of life, higher standards of living, creating space for goods, transportation, and economic development. And all of this while also being critical to supporting the urgent and necessary need that we all know we have to drive down greenhouse gas emissions. So the significant investments that we're making in transit now, as well as through Transport 2050 as it comes to fruition over the next 30 years, will shape the future of our communities and our province for decades to come. So thank you so much for all of your work. And I and Minister Heyman look forward to continuing to work with the Mayor's Council community groups and other stakeholders as this plan moves forward. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you both ministers for joining us today on this important occasion with the completion of Transport 2050. You both have been key members of helping us develop this plan, and I've obviously had the opportunity through our stakeholder meetings to engage and work with you for a number of years in the development plan, and your contributions personally have really helped shape and build the plan. I think also the partnership from the provincial government has been incredibly important here. I often say the best work that can be really done in our communities is when all the levels of government are in alignment and are working together and rowing in the same direction. And I think we've all recognized we have a lot of same objectives, same goals, and same challenges we want to strive to work on. And I think the collaboration that's been shown here with the provincial government and the work here is commendable. Now, as I said, the development of this plan is an important milestone, but the most important thing about plans is actually implementing the plans. And we know local governments, TransLink, have a lot of work to do to turn this plan into reality. But we also know we're going to need some significant partnerships from the provincial government to really help us achieve the bold vision set out in Transport 2050. So today, although is an important day on the journey and a milestone, we still have a tremendous amount of work to do together. But I do want to thank and really appreciate our provincial partners and the ministers for their collaboration in this work. It has been so important. So thank you. Okay, so with that, before we move to the formal adoption of both the TransLink board and the Mayor's Council process, where members will be able to kind of share their perspectives and thoughts on the plan, before we did jump into that, I did want to give an opportunity for any members of the Mayor's Council or the TransLink board, if they have any clarifying questions or questions related to the plan for any of the TransLink staff team before we get into that more formal adoption process. So I will look to see if anyone has any questions or any clarifications they need before we move into that stage of the discussion. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, I'm actually going to now pass it off to Chair Lorraine Cunningham to guide the TransLink board formal process, and then we will come back and complete the process with the Mayor's Council as well.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair Cote. That's a bit of a mouthful, Co-Chair Cote. I'm here to oversee the motion from the board. So first off, can I have a mover and a seconder for the resolution that you have on page 2 of your package? Andy, thank you. Harj, thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'll ask for any comments or discussion by board members. And I see that Andy Ross has put up his hand. So Andy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lorraine. And of course, I fully support this report that's come before. There's so many positives we could take from this report, but also in the process that got us there. So I want to acknowledge, as others have, the incredible hard work that was done by the Mayor's Council, by our executive board, and we've got to recognize our staff as well, who went above and beyond. This report was started before the pandemic, if anybody remembers that time in history, so it's been there a long time. And as we've just heard, the collaboration with both the province and other levels of government has just been exceptional. It's often said that a good transportation plan starts with a good land use plan. And I think it speaks volumes that the synergy we're getting working with Metro Vancouver on the 2050, as well as the Climate 2050 and other plans, really bode well for the future in these times. I took a look back at our Transport 2021, which came out in 1993, so the timeframes are relevant. And there was an interesting aspect in that plan where it looked back on the 30 years prior. So, you know, we sometimes get so wrapped up in what we're doing that we forget some of the progress we made. There was a lot of good stuff came out of that Transport 21 plan. But to put in perspective, if we were sitting 30 years ago in 1992, the population of the Metro Vancouver was about 1.65 million. We've increased that today by 1 million people. And conservative reports expect by 2050, it will be at least 1 million more people. So we know these realities are coming at us and we have to be prepared. And of course, we've heard a lot of talk as well. The average house price for 1992 was $250,000 in Metro Vancouver. Who knows what it'll be in 2050? So we know we've got work to do, we need to build. And we have done over the years. Let's just remember, in 1992, there was no rapid bus, there was no B lines, no Golden Ear Bridge, no Evergreen Line, no Millennium Line, there was no Canada Line. We only just crossed the Fraser River to Scott Road. There was no TransLink, it didn't appear for a few more years. So we know we build, we know that, and we have ideas, and depending on funding, we've seen the great development of housing and land use along with transit. But the unknowns are the technologies. I mean, 1992, we had to wait another 15 years for the iPhone. There was no Teslas, electric scooters, no compass cards. So there's technological changes we're going to see that we're going to have to adapt to that hopefully will assist us. And I think there's a kind of irony in 1992, we launched the Air Care program to respond to pollution, air pollution in the Lower Mainland. I think that was the challenge of our day. The challenge of our day, which is highlighted in this report, is the climate change challenge. I'm so excited about what we're doing our part at TransLink and transportation. I think it speaks well, and I commend everybody who participated in this report. And thank you for that opportunity to speak to this, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was a very interesting look back on some history. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, I joined the board in August 2021, so not that long ago. Despite that, though, I have seen 3 drafts of this plan in that short time. I think it was 5, 6, and 7 that I've seen, which I think really speaks to both the diligence of the effort, but also the depth of the collaboration between staff at TransLink and then the board at TransLink and the Mayor's Council and the work that's gone into it. Of course, I'm also not entirely new to the broader arc of this process. I was elected to Vancouver City Council from 2008 to 2018. So in that role, I certainly saw the consequences of having a strategy that was increasingly unable to deal with emerging challenges. And the 3 that I would point to particularly that I think this one does such a good job of really pulling into the future. The first one, and very dear to my heart for those of you that know me, is the issue of reconciliation. This plan really takes a substantial first and key step in the journey from moving from viewing First Nations in the region as stakeholders in these process to understanding that they are fundamentally rights holders and that our relationship as a TransLink board and as mayor's council and local governments needs to be taken from that perspective. That's a big jump to take in one step, and certainly not what this plan proposes, but I think critically is thoughtful about what that next step looks like and how we deepen our relationships over the time. I'm not going to speak too much to climate change, even though it's another key one for me, but I know Andy's spoken to it, and of course the Minister and Minister of State have both spoken to it really well. But I think it would be impossible to stand behind a plan at this point in human history for transportation in a region that wasn't substantively focused on that. The last one I'll speak to is affordability. And really, I mean, wrapped up in that is understanding we're not transit users or pedestrians or bicyclists or car drivers or truck drivers. We're people. And we need to get from point A to point B and increasingly to C and D and E and sometimes work from home and other things. And we're going to do that on many different modes. So really a modern transportation plan needs to look primarily at connectivity. And I think this one does that extremely well, looking at the connectivity between modes, but also understanding that land use and transportation are intrinsically linked, and you cannot have healthy communities and a healthy economy without a transportation plan that understands that. So I'm very happy to be supporting the plan today. I really want to thank staff. There was such a breadth of engagement that went into this. I'll say as a renter and a transit user, my time in not just transit user, but transit dependent. I haven't owned a car in 30 plus years. I owned one for about 6 months. So I can't say I never owned one, but I haven't had one most of my life for economic reasons. To say that most of the decision-making rooms I sit in, I am well in the minority, both as a renter and a transit dependent person. And that's where I think the critical need to have the breadth of engagement that's evidenced in this plan to make sure that car drivers and people involved with goods movement and then transit dependent people and all the other folks in the region can all come together and we can see the results of that collaboration in this plan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to it today.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Marcella.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like both Andrew and Andy, I can't commend the staff enough for their energy, their dedication, their listening. They listen to everybody in the region. They listen to mayors. Sometimes they listen to us even, but they just never lost their energy and their enthusiasm to create a truly future plan for this region. So I just really want to acknowledge them as well as everybody who's participated in the process. I'm going to follow with much more pedantic remarks, if I may. I'd like to speak to just a few things that, you know, nobody pays a lot of attention to them because it just sort of business as usual. But one that's near and dear to my heart is safety. And I think it's really important to point out that there is a lot in this plan that relates to safety of people in this region. It's written in the report, but I do want to pull it out that in the past 5 years, there's an average of about 100 people who have died in traffic accidents in our region. 40 of those are walking or biking or rolling in some other way. That is something that we shouldn't tolerate. And so part of this plan is creating streets for people. So separation between road use and biking use, separation by speed, slow speeds. So there's a lot of actions in here to attempt to make our streets safer for everybody who lives in our region. It's the last thing you want to do is have one of your family members not come home. So I just want to commend staff for their focus on that. A second area, and Andrea, it relates to all the people in the region who use transit all the time. Some people have choices, and a lot of times people do not choose to use transit because of either reliability at speed, cars sit faster, I can do my car faster. So I think in the plan, within the strategy, there's a proposal how to make transit much more reliable with respect to priorities on frequent bus routes. And that's something that will take the coordination of a lot of entities, not just TransLink. So I commend TransLink for focusing on that. And my third pedantic, one that I would like to call out is the movement of goods. we all like to forget that we all buy things, we all need things, we have food, we need computers, we all need, somehow those goods have to get to our homes. And working on roadways to ease congestion and to create more room and space for the ability of all traffic to move smoothly, including the movement of goods, I think is highly commendable. So I just want to call those few out and thank you very much. Thank you for the time and appreciate all the work everybody's done in this.
Thank you so much, Marcella. Harpinder.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to just begin by saying that the plan that's been put forward is quite expansive. I think the amount of work done here highlights the fundamental freedom of mobility question that we have within our region. I think that it covers it in multiple different ways. I think that's one thing that shines outside of the plan. And in addition to that is also the addressing the climate change emergency. Saying that we have taken this seriously, that we are going to make decisions that are going to be not only aspirational, but also achievable. So I think there's a certain key of having goals that are not only that you want to achieve in the long term, but that are achievable in the short term to get us there. And finally, one of the most important ones is the affordable housing part, where it's not only freedom of mobility, but also freedom of location, where you have the ability to choose where you could live alongside a particular transit route. And so that once we've provided a freedom of mobility, you can also choose to also have the ability to build your community at a particular location. And I commend everyone who's done a little work before I've joined the board, and I look forward to implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harpinder. Many thank yous have gone to all the staff and everybody that's collaborated in this. I guess my final comment before we call for the vote is that this is, each time we do work like this, we build on what was there before. And this has become the most comprehensive plan that has been done on a long range, from a long range outlook. And I think it's really been excellent work, and I think it's going to serve the region well. So with that, I'd like to call the question for the board only at this moment in time. I have a mover and seconder, so all in favor of approving Transport 2050 as you have in your resolutions, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried, and thank you and congratulations for our part. And I will now turn the chair back to Mayor Cote, and he will move on to do the Mayor's Council resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham. And I'd now like to ask the Mayor's Council if I can get a mover or seconder to get
Second.
And seconded. And I'd now like to open it up for comments and discussions from the mayors. Mayor Buchanan.
Okay, I guess I will kick this off. So I too want to start by thanking the TransLink staff for the time and effort they have put into this, and really kudos to them, for the whole team who have really worked collaboratively, not just with the public and I think it was Kevin who said the largest engagement strategy to date, but really all the work that's gone in terms of shaping this strategy. And I know, speaking to my own staff in my city, that they fully support the plan, as do I, and really appreciated the steps that TransLink took to really deeply engage municipal and other agency partners in shaping the plan as well. Before I get into my formal comments around the plan itself, Andy started with a bit of history, and for the last couple of years, you've all seen my Zoom background, and I know we were given new ones to put up for today, but I intentionally left this up because I think it does speak to the history. And this is a photo at the foot of Lonsdale from 1947, and at that time there was a transit campaign to go from rails to rubber. And it was a campaign that was launched to modernize the entire transit system. converting from streetcars to buses. And I think, as Andy said, there's been a couple looks, in history from then, but from 1947, it shouldn't be lost that 75 years later, we are looking at a new transit campaign and plan, and really a plan that is once again going to modernize the transit system in our region to support livability, to provide for the future growth, and really to support economic prosperity. And I think we all want to be able to move safely and efficiently from place to place, whether it's within our own communities or across the region. But we also know that there's no single solution to the challenges that we face or how people need to move. But for too long, and probably not too long after 1947, when we started to see cities being designed with the car in mind. And we know that that hasn't served the challenges that we face, the really real challenges we face around climate, but it also hasn't served people well. So for people who needed different ways to move that didn't have access to a vehicle, it has not served them well. And so from a prosperity perspective and a livability perspective, we didn't do our best for people. That's why I think, we're focusing on different options for moving and connecting people. And I think this plan is something that really strikes the balance in terms of what we need today, but also that futuristic look of, 30 years from now. And I do love all the backgrounds of the new modern plan, because I think the transportation is the one area where we know it's changing rapidly. And so I think what the plan gives us is focuses on people. It allows people who need to move in different ways options. And we know when we provide options, people choose them, and it makes however we move a lot easier. It makes our goods move better. They're healthier choices. So it's not just better for our climate, but it's better for our own personal health. And it's great it's healthier for our economy as well. But it also is a plan that is flexible. And we know even in the last 2 years, we've had to be flexible. We're challenged with economically in terms of moving forward and implementing. But I think this plan, what it does is it gives us that building block, a new building block where there's a lot more to do. It's going to require all of our leadership in order to make it happen. And it will require a significant amount of partnerships from our agencies, our own local governments, and our senior levels of government. But I think that, from my city, we are undertaking our own update of our mobility strategy that's just underway. And we have purposely aligned our objectives and actions to align with Transport 2050. And we are a willing partner at the table. We're so looking forward to be part of this. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be part of the Mayor's Council and the board to support this for today and for the future of the people in our region. It's going to be exciting to work to implement the actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Buchanan. Mayor Froese.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank staff and thank the board and the Mayor's Council for the work that they've done in this. This truly is a plan that reaches into all parts of the transit region that we all call home. The staff, I think, went above and beyond in listening to the public, listening to the board, listening to the mayors and the communities in coming up with a plan that will stand the test of time. So I just wanted to add my voice to thank everyone for the work that they put into this great volume that ended up on my doorstep just the other day. And it's a lot of great reading. It's one thing to see it on bits and pieces online as we get the reports, but when you get it landing on your doorstep with a thud, it's a big document. There's a lot of meat in it. There's a lot of great work in there, and I think it recognizes the needs of our community and our transit system way into the future. So, with that, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Froese. Mayor Dingwall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And likewise, I just want to recognize at the front end the significant effort that's gone into this, clearly by staff, by the community, by the board, by the senior levels of government that we rely on for lots of funding, as well as this Mayor's Council. And it's been a heavy level of discussion for a long time. I think for me personally, I think some of the highlights include the social and regional equity components that are so significant and so different than past visions. It also represents a significant paradigm shift to deal with live, work, play close to home, the 15-minute communities, as well as the focus on environmental awareness and action. And finally, I guess, I think, again, I think for myself, my constituents around funding, there's continues to be significant work done towards securing affordable, balanced, and fair regional revenue streams to support these ambitious, but I think achievable outcomes. So again, I think it's a great document that will lead us well into the future.
Thank you, Mayor Dingwall. Mayor Kennedy Stewart.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for being here today. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the, I'm speaking to you from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We're in such a bleak time with COVID. You know, we're on a Zoom call announcing this, not in a auditorium or in front of a SkyTrain. And I think this is a great signal to the public, is that even though we've had unprecedented challenges, even though our daily lives have been totally rocked by the pandemic, this group of people has not lost focus on the future, that we are and have been dedicated to fighting COVID, but at the same time laying a very bold vision for future transit development from one end of the region to the other, to make life more convenient for people, to tackle climate change, to at the same time where we're looking at attaching housing provision to transit. Prior to COVID, we were leading North America, and in large cases, a lot of world cities in terms of transit growth. People were rushing to get on our brilliant transit system, and I think that as COVID fades, that will return with gusto, and then having a plan like this is so essential. We do have great partners in the federal and provincial governments as well, showing they're not only willing to step up and make the capital investments we need to make. If you just look at the Surrey Langley SkyTrain extension, that is a fantastic new investment in electric bus fleets, in sea buses. But we know too that they are also committed to future investments. So I think, you know, if folks are watching this, the takeaway is we've got your back when it comes to transit. This is the plan to do it, and we're committing to delivering it. So thanks again for all the hard work, all the public who participated, all the staff who are just lifting so much in a difficult time, and I'm very, very proud to stand behind this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Councillor Cameron.
Hi, I would agree with everything that's been said by people who spoke before me, so I won't add to what they're saying. I'll just say that I think that if one looks at the history of transit and transportation in this region for the past 40 or 50 years, the criticism that could be fairly leveled was that we didn't do enough soon enough, and we weren't ambitious enough. And you know, infrastructure like SkyTrain lines took way too long to get built, and we didn't think big enough. And I think the region has suffered from that lack of vision and that lack of action on the transit front. And so I'm very, I'm really heartened and even excited by this vision, which I think is appropriately ambitious, realistic still. But what we're doing here is we're not just talking about a transit system, we're shaping the future of the region. And we all know that the future of the region is going to depend in a very significant way on mobility and people being able to get around the region as it grows. And so, Staff have done a great deal of work on this. The elected officials have put time in. It'll be up to future elected officials to make sure it's implemented. But I think we've charted an ambitious course here, and I think that we'd be well served if we are able to follow it through.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Mayor McCallum.
Thank you very much. I first would like to really thank all the staff and all the people that worked, including ourselves, but our communities, all the stakeholders that have worked so hard to put this plan together. I think it's a super plan. It's a great plan, actually. And I too was glad to see the document that arrived on my doorstep a few days ago. Truly reflective of all the work that has gone on by not just the people on this board, but previous boards, also previous staff and this staff. I'm very, very impressed with the outcome of this report. I think it really gives us a vision into the future of where we're going to head in Metro. I've always believed in transit as simply, I try to get it on a simple basis, and it's moving people and goods, and as fast or as efficient as we can, which are the new words of the future. Our region's growing. We're probably overall as a region one of the fastest growing. This plan fits into that growth. It looks into the future of how we're going to do transit. And again, I'm very, very proud to be able to support this plan. I think it's a great plan. I want to thank everybody involved putting it together.
Thank you very much, Mayor McCallum. Mayor Morden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely great collaboration all around. Metro Vancouver and TransLink's tie-in here has been completely excellent and just made absolute sense from top to bottom. Looking at all the conversations going back in time that I sat there and enjoyed, I just want to acknowledge Mr. Larry Beasley, as well as staff member Jeff Cross as well. It's definitely staunch advocates for great public transit, and to all my colleagues as well as the board members, you know what? I didn't hear anyone say no to anything. What I heard was yes, full support for great public transit system, and how do we get it done and get it done as quickly as we possibly can. And through COVID, we saw what really happens when emergency workers and people that don't have the same income as others, 110 people rode the transit system every day, 110,000 people. That's not nothing. That's people that needed a bus or a train to get to work. So, you know, that was a really important message, and everybody stuck by commitments to building and rebuilding, as it were. And now we only look forward now, which is just fantastic as far as I'm concerned. So my final comment is to the 15-minute community, because when you've got a community like mine that's going to put 40,000 or 50,000 more people here in the next, well, towards 2050, 65% of my community will leave to go somewhere else every day to go to work. So COVID was another great teacher there, because people got to enjoy being at home, and the screaming and yelling was loud as we want to stay working here, Mr. Mayor. So couldn't be easier but to support an amazing plan like this to live, work, and play within 15 minutes. So thank you very much to all for supporting the plan. I think it's going to be a great plan.
Thank you, Mayor Morden. Mayor Vandenbroek.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to take this opportunity to say thank you to everyone that was involved in this. This is a great step into healthier and safer communities for all of us. And I am so proud to be a part of this. I don't know if I can call myself a transit expert now, but I have learned so much in the last couple of years, and it's been absolutely fantastic, actually. And when I received that booklet, I was just so proud that I'm like, I had something to do with this, and we're making a difference. And everybody should just be really proud of themselves for contributing to this, because it's what we've really needed in this region for a really long time. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor Vanderbroek, and thank you to all of the comments from my colleagues and for all of the work that the Mayor's Council has put in over the past 3 years in collaborating and helping shape the development of Transport 2050. I do particularly want to acknowledge the work of the New Mobility Committee and Chair Morden for the work they've done, because this item has been on every single new mobility agenda since for the past 3 years, and that committee has gone deep and really dug into this work, and really appreciate the extensive engagement that committee has done in helping shape and help build put this plan together. Now I can be a little bit of a planning nerd, so I do know I have my biases. But this plan is a big deal. This is a significant action that we are taking with the development and adoption of this plan. We have over the years updated our transportation and long-range transportation plans in the region. But the reality is this is the first major update since Transport 21 was developed in the early 1990s. And obviously our region has changed significantly, and we have new emerging challenges and priorities. And this is a very significant document that will not only serve our region in the short term, but will be a guiding document to really help shape and evolve for many decades to come. Now, getting here today has been a journey, and I think it's been a journey I don't think any of us quite expected to turn out the way it is. I remember when we started in 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago, there down this path. And I first want to acknowledge all of the engagement that the public has been involved in helping and shape this plan. I remember in 2019 being in a very crowded P&E public engagement session, hearing from residents all across the region with thousands of ideas and visions coming forward from a real broad cross-section of our very diverse region there. This has probably been the largest public engagement work TransLink has ever undertaken, and we really did hear from so many people that really help inspire and help shape the plan. So I think first and foremost, I want to thank the residents of Metro Vancouver for helping us inspire us and helping us shape and helping us prioritize what's important for this region. I'd also like to acknowledge the incredible teams at the TransLink organization that have worked so hard to put this together. The New Mobility Committee and the Mayor's Council has seen countless reports, countless ideas. And it's been the team that has been actually taking the challenges, taking the issues that have been raised in various meetings, issues that have been raised in the public, and actually transforming them into concrete ideas on how we can actually turn this into a plan and actually address the key priorities and challenges that our region's facing. So I'd like to thank all of the TransLink team for their incredible role and hard work over a very difficult period. Now, I know this is a plan that started before the pandemic, and we are here still in a global pandemic. But I really appreciate our dedication to continue with this work. I know when the pandemic first hit, there was discussion about should we be pausing this long-term planning, and I think we made the right call by sticking with this, because the reality is the challenges we were facing before the pandemic and the need for this plan have only gotten greater during the pandemic and have been more emphasized there. So I think this planning work is even more important than we started this journey, and I really appreciate everyone sticking with this and continuing with this process and seeing it to the end point that we are today with the adoption. Now, I truly believe Transport 2050 is going to be a transformational plan for our region. It's wide-ranging, and no doubt TransLink as an organization is not going to have the capacity to implement this complex plan. It is going to require all hands on decks from TransLink, from local governments, from the provincial government, from the regional government and from all of our communities to really make this plan a reality. But this is a bold plan. This is a plan that is talking about significantly improving the access to public transit across our region in a way that is truly aspirational. I think we can be incredibly proud of the great transit system we do have in Metro Vancouver. Almost half of our population currently lives within good access and within walking distance of fairly reliable, fairly consistent transit service. But this plan really talks about taking that to a whole new level and really expanding that throughout the region, ensuring that there's good quality, reliable, safe transit throughout the region. This plan also really digs into the affordability issue, which came up significantly in the public engagement process that we came up as one of the top concerns that our region is facing. And no doubt housing affordability is first and foremost, but I think the issue is much broader to that. And there are many in this region that face challenges, and I appreciate the significant amount of work in this plan to really look at and dig deep into those affordability issues that our region faces. I think our region has been very successful in increasing density, increasing mixed-use neighborhoods around transit. But I think if we've had any failures in past plans, it's that we have failed to make sure that affordability components in housing match up with our transportation investments. And I think this plan really makes some bold steps and ambitions towards correcting some of those issues and ensuring that people of all walks of life have access to good transit, and that we are making space to ensure that people that need the transit most in our communities have access and can actually afford to live near
there you go.
Okay, we're still okay. And finally, I think to wrap up my comments, I'm really proud that this is a plan that not only looks to the future, but also looks to the past as well too. We know the future is going to have some wonderful opportunities. We know there's going to be shifts with automation. We know there's going to be shifts in terms of trends, in terms of more shared use of transportation infrastructure. And with that brings huge opportunities. But I think it also recognizes that the foundations of good cities is built and has been solidly worked on for generations in cities all around the world. And concepts like building people-first streets, these aren't brand new concepts that have just been invented. These have been around for generations, and many cities of the world have been incredibly successful in adopting that. So to me, I think this is a plan that looks boldly into the future, but also tries to find the successes in the past, not only here locally, our successes in our region, but also globally, what has made cities and transportation really work. So moving forward, I know the adoption of the plan is an important milestone, but as I said earlier, it's actually going to be the implementation of this plan that's going to be key to achieving our goals. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it in any way. The implementation of this bold plan is not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of partners to be at the table, and it is going to require investments and priorities to align with the actions listed in this plan. I'm confident we can get there as a region, and I'm confident that the communities will be behind the bold vision that has been set before us. We have no doubt faced some challenges during the pandemic, and we are going to continue to have to work our way through that. But I think having a plan like this is going to give us that roadmap, not only to recover from the pandemic, but then get back on track to really building that vision that's consistent with, I think, all of our values in the region, and get our momentum back here in the Metro Vancouver region. So I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done, and I think this is a really big and important day in Metro Vancouver. So I see a couple more speakers before we go to the roll call vote. Mayor Kennedy Stewart.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to thank you. We know that you have so far decided that you're not going to be running again in the fall. Of course, we're going to work hard to make sure you change your mind. But really wanted to thank you for your leadership through what has been an incredibly difficult time, and not only to help us with all the challenges on the revenue side, but also to get us through to this stage with with a group that can be very opinionated at times, and but of course very dedicated to their communities, just like you are. So thanks again, Mayor Cote, for everything you've done for us.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Mayor Stewart. And you know, it's been inspirational to be able to work with this group of lots of passions for the communities, and being able to help bring different perspectives together has been you know, incredibly rewarding, and I think has been reflective in the work we've been doing. Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much. And I too just actually wanted to echo Mayor Kennedy's, Mayor Stewart's comments, and my apologies. I had it in my notes and I missed it when I wrapped up, but just wanted to thank you, Jonathan, Mayor Cote, for stewarding us, continuing bringing us back to the work that we needed to get done. And has been said, we're not necessarily always an easy group, but I think the one thing we have in common is, you know, really from the beginning, when we had our initial meeting, is I think we are all, you know, which is 17 new mayors at that time, really have a passion to get the work done and to really what's in the best interest of the region and the people that we serve. So you've done an incredible job doing that. So thank you so much for chairing us through what hasn't been an easy, particularly the last 2 years. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Buchanan. So with that, let's move to the adoption of this plan. Given the procedures, we do need to do a roll call, and I don't know if I'm turning it to Carol or Mike.
You're turning it over to me. Thank you, Mayor Cote. I will be calling the municipalities out in alphabetical order, and if the Mayor's Council ask the Mayor's Council member to indicate whether they're voting for or against the motion on the table. So I'll start with Anmore, Mayor McEwen.
In favor.
Belcarra, Mayor Ross.
In favor.
Bowen Island, Councillor Morse.
In favor.
Burnaby, Mayor Hurley.
In favor.
Coquitlam, Mayor Richard Stewart.
In favor.
Delta, Councillor Kruger.
In favor.
Electoral Area A, Director McCutcheon.
In favor.
Langley City, Mayor Vanderbroek.
In favor.
Langley Township, Mayor Froese.
In favor.
Lions Bay, Mayor McLaughlin.
In favor.
Maple Ridge, Mayor Morden.
In favor.
New Westminster, Mayor Cote.
In favor.
North Vancouver City, Mayor Buchanan.
In favor.
North Vancouver District, Mayor Little.
In favor.
Pitt Meadows, Mayor Dingwall.
In favor.
Port Coquitlam, Mayor West.
In favor.
Port Moody, Mayor Vagramov.
In favor.
Richmond, Mayor Brody.
In favor.
Surrey, Mayor McCallum.
In favor.
Tsawwassen First Nation, Chief Baird.
In favor.
Vancouver, Mayor Kennedy Stewart.
In favor.
West Vancouver, Councillor Cameron.
In favor.
And White Rock, Mayor Walker.
In favor.
Thank you, Mayor's Council. That is unanimous. I'll turn it back to Chair Cote.
Okay, thank you very much. Good work, everyone, and unanimous on the TransLink board and the Mayor's Council. So a good start to Transport 2050. And with that, we're going to move to item 5.1. Our TransLink planning team doesn't waste any time getting started. The first item is the Transport 2050 implementation, and I'd like to pass it off to Sarah Ross to introduce this item.
Thank you so much. Yes, as you noted, Chair Cote, and as Kevin noted in his presentation, we are not pausing in any way with the approval of Transport 2050. We are actively working on a number of initiatives that will advance these commitments to implementation. The report in your package provides a summary of 7 of those streams of work, and I'll speak briefly to each of them. Firstly, the update to the 10-year vision will identify which elements of Transport 2050 will be prioritized within the next 10 years. That will become the implementation blueprint that will guide TransLink's actions and be the basis of future funded plans. We've been actively working on this for a number of months already in anticipation. There is a timeline in the package. We have heard from the Finance Committee a strong desire to have the key decisions for this blueprint made as soon as possible. And we are reviewing the schedule to see how that may be achieved. Finally, we've been using the working name of New Vision, and there is a recommendation in the report for staff to bring back alternate naming options. Moving on, as many have noted this morning, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is a key goal of Transport 2050 and an urgent imperative given the climate emergency we are facing. Last week, we released our climate action strategy with our roadmap to reduce emissions from TransLink's fleet and facilities by 45% by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. By 2030, we will have replaced over 400 diesel buses with zero emission battery electrics. In 2024, we will be fueling our expanded natural gas fleet with 100% renewable natural gas, further lowering our GHG emissions. And together, those actions will achieve a 37% reduction by 2030, but we will need continued support for additional investments to meet the 45% reduction target and continue our transition to zero emissions fleet and facilities. We also need to ensure our infrastructure and our operations are resilient to the impacts of climate change. And in 2022, we will work with partners, building on work already underway with Metro Vancouver to develop a regional resilience strategy. So this will include sharing information and data related to hazards, risks, and vulnerabilities. Understanding the potential impacts on infrastructure and service delivery is an important part of planning for the future, including climate change impacts and natural hazard risks related to extreme weather events, such as those we have seen quite recently in our province. The item after this one, we will get into more detail on work underway to develop a detailed action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light duty vehicles in Metro Vancouver. As also been noted this morning, the commitments to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and to advance social equity are foundational parts of Transport 2050, and actions to do this are woven throughout the document. These have been clear priorities since the Transport 2050 process began. And so we've already been deeply engaging with Indigenous nations and urban Indigenous peoples on an Indigenous relations framework, including a vision statement and guiding principles that will be brought forward to the board for approval. One of the priorities we've heard through this engagement is addressing the lack of transit service to reserve lands. An immediate action TransLink is taking is to meet with First Nations to understand more fully their key transit service needs and work collaboratively on how transit service can best be provided to help address the systemic barriers that Canada's policy of isolating Indigenous peoples has caused. Through the 2050 process, we partnered with Metro Vancouver on social equity analysis, and we will build on that work to develop a regional social equity framework. We look forward to expanding the partnership to also include other community and government organizations involved in health, equity, and inclusion, because efforts to reduce barriers and increase access for equity denied populations must be done through a collaborative and coordinated approach. Finally, work will begin to flesh out the details of the monitoring program to track and measure the performance indicators described in Part H of the Transport 2050 document. These measures are also being used as part of the evaluation process to identify priorities for inclusion in the updated 10-year vision document. Ralph Nielsen, TransLink's Director of Sustainability, and Andrew McCurran, Director of Strategic Planning, are also here today, and together we are very pleased to present this report and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. So I will now open it up to any questions from either of the bodies. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So one question I do have is there is some recommendations. Do these have to be voted on separately between the two bodies, Mike?
Just for the Mayor's Council.
Okay, so I'll look for the Mayor's Council if they'd like to move the recommendation.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, and moving on to item 5.2, which is update on Transport 2050 actions to eliminate regional GHG emissions from on-road transportation. And I'm going to pass this back to Sarah Ross and Caitlin Cooper.
Yes, thank you. So the global and local challenge of responding to the climate emergency, of which transportation is a prime contributor, particularly in this region, calls for us to act urgently. Regional transportation emissions have actually been increasing, but carbon-free is one of the goals of Transport 2050, and the headline target is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from light-duty vehicles by 65% by 2030. That's only 8 years from now. Caitlin Cooper is the lead planner on this file, and she's going to speak in more detail to the work we have underway with Metro Vancouver and the province to determine exactly how we will have a faster transition to low and zero emission vehicles, and also reduce the usage of fossil fuel powered vehicles that will still be on the road in 8 years. Caitlin?
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, so my name is Caitlin Cooper. I'm the project manager for Transport 2050 and the lead planner for Transport 2050 implementation. So as many of you know, having just approved Transport 2050, we have 5 goal areas in Transport 2050. We have goal 1, convenient choice. Can you go back, please? Thank you. Goal 1, convenient choices for everyone. Goal 2, reliable choices for everyone. Goal 3, affordable choices for everyone. Goal 4, safe and comfortable choices for everyone. And goal 5, carbon-free choices for everyone. So what I'm going to present to you today is how we're preparing to move forward with implementing and achieving goal 5, the carbon-free choices for everyone. Addressing the climate emergency is one of TransLink's top priorities. Today, I'm going to give you an overview of where we are with our science-based targets, that our actions need to be strengthened, and that coordination is necessary. More detail is provided in the memo in your agenda package. Next slide, please. Through the development of the regional transportation strategy, TransLink has a requirement to consider provincial and regional environmental objectives, including air quality and greenhouse gas emissions reduction. In 2018, Metro Vancouver adopted the global targets established through the Paris Agreement as our regional targets. These are a 45% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030 from 2010 levels, and achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. Through initial modeling work, Metro Vancouver determined that achieving the overall regional targets will be very challenging, and developed some sector-specific targets needed to accelerate actions in sectors that have higher potential to reduce GHGs. These targets were introduced and approved by the Metro Vancouver Board of Directors through the Clean Air Plan and the Climate 2050 Transportation Roadmap in 2021. In June and July of 2021, the Mayor's Council and Board approved the inclusion of the light-duty vehicle target in Transport 2050, acknowledging that it is ambitious and that achieving it will be challenging. Next slide. Transportation accounts for over 40% of our emissions in the region, with light-duty cars, trucks, and SUVs, the vehicles that most of us drive on a daily basis, accounting for the largest proportion of transportation-related GHGs. People often blame the big trucks, and they do play a role, but it is the sheer number of cars, trucks, and SUVs on the road, over 1.5 million registered in the Metro Vancouver region, that creates the vast majority of those emissions. The focus of Transport 2050 implementation will be on reducing on-road transportation emissions, and Metro Vancouver is continuing to work with the other sectors on reducing their GHG emissions. Next slide. We have had GHG reduction targets in the region and province for over 15 years, yet the current trends are not on track for meeting those targets. Over the past 10 years, we've seen a decrease of 1% of total GHG emissions in the region, but we've seen an increase of 6% of total transportation emissions in the region over the past 10 years. So to borrow a term from the COVID-19 pandemic, we really need to start bending this curve and trending downwards to achieve our regional targets. Through Metro Vancouver's initial modeling under the business as planned scenario, Metro Vancouver found that we would only achieve a 5% reduction in GHG emissions by 2030 from light duty vehicles. This included current electric vehicle purchasing trends, which across BC, under 10% of new vehicle sales were electric in 2020. That means 90% of vehicles sold in 2020 were gas or diesel powered, and they will likely still be on the road by 2030. Even with the aggressive but achievable scenario, which included ambitious actions such as 100% of new vehicle sales being electric in 2030 and frequent transit within walking distance for nearly everyone in the region, we still couldn't meet the overall GHG reduction target, let alone the new sector-specific target. We need urgent and significant action to meet our targets. Next slide. Transport 2050 and the Climate 2050 Transportation Roadmap include a wide range of actions, and the implementation details are what we need to focus on going forward. We have limited public resources to support people's choice to move around, and we are moving into a time of inflation and increased strain on household affordability. The action required is going to be unlike anything most of us have seen, action at the scale of what was undertaken by government and private sector alike in the face of existential threat in the World War II era. Next slide. To take that substantial action, we will need to be coordinated and aligned. We have a very limited time frame, only 8 years, to drastically reduce our GHG output. We have the opportunity to be global leaders, but it will take bold and courageous action by all of us. We need to come together with the shared goal of meeting these targets. We all have a role to play, and the details of our collaboration is still being discussed between the agencies. TransLink and Metro Vancouver will be working closely with all of you and the municipalities to develop a coordinated and consistent approach. Next slide. TransLink is committing $250,000 in 2022 to support the work described before. Management will report back regularly to the Mayor's Council and TransLink Board on progress. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Yeah, I know the work on the climate emergency is of high priority, and I think it's sobering to kind of realize you know the steps we're going to have to take to really meet the targets that we have set ourselves. So really appreciate that and setting the scene for the work we need to do. Director McCutcheon.
Thank you for this report, and one of the areas that to me seems like we're really failing on, and I think your data supported that, is just around urban freight. And while I know this is addressed a bit in Transit 2050, I feel like there's still a lot more out of the box thinking and creative thinking we could do with combining our transportation system with supporting urban freight movement around the region. You know, this is not my area of expertise, but things like, could we add another car on the back of SkyTrain so that, you know, goods can be moved from, you know, one part of the region to another part of the region, while that doesn't have to be able to stop in any of the stations. But, you know, that's just one example. I wonder if there isn't more that we could be doing at TransLink to be thinking more creatively around this. I feel like every third vehicle I see is an Amazon Prime vehicle on the road, and that's not going to go away.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. Absolutely, looking at urban freight and medium and heavy goods vehicles is a really important area. The scope that we're proposing to focus on over the next year is especially on the light duty vehicles. And so, Director McCutcheon, although we do have work underway looking at urban freight emissions reductions, and the province is very interested in that file, From Caitlin's presentation, you could see the focus 31% of the emissions on light duty, and that's where we think there's more potential to be able to reduce over the next 10 years to get deeper reductions, which is why Metro Vancouver has recommended a higher target for 2030 for light duty vehicles versus heavy duty vehicles. But the ideas that you raise are good ones that we will be continuing to explore, just not as much of the intense focus that we need to take in the next year.
Andrew, sorry, may I ask a follow on, Chair Cote? I guess my question though, would things like, those Amazon, I'm not picking on Amazon, but the small, would those not be light vehicles that, those, I don't know what they are, but they're small trucks that are driving around. Would that not be light vehicles?
Yes, sorry, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. The delivery vans and trucks, which have a much higher potential to electrify, that would be part of this scope, working with those larger firms and fleet owners to try to transition those vehicles, where electric options are available and are cost effective. As well, Transport 2050 has a number of actions around local logistics hubs to try to, and in fact, the City of Vancouver, Mayor Stewart and his staff are developing a pilot for local bicycle logistics to have a central hub in the downtown area where larger trucks can come and drop off goods and then be delivered by electric cargo bikes. So that's something that TransLink and Transport 2050 is interested in supporting and trying to scale, looking for those opportunities that you've discussed there. Yeah.
That's great. I hope that can be a priority.
Thank you, Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this report. I really support the approach, and I actually really applaud the efforts of being so upfront and bold in terms of what's in front of us. I'm just curious how we can leverage the resources or the opportunities that private organizations that we could look at partnership models with them in addressing the urgencies, because as government, we try to be as nimble as possible, but we're not necessarily as nimble. It's more challenging where there's a ton of innovation and opportunity with the private sector. And so how can we look at those opportunities and really leverage them?
Mayor Cote, would you like us to respond?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. That's a really great point, Mayor Buchanan, and I think that's the work that we're laying out can absolutely call out those and identify actions that need to be taken by government, but also leveraging industry. And I think that we can also as we're still developing the exact coordination and the exact work plan for this, the team will take that away and we'll look at how we can build in engagement with industry. TransLink is very well connected with some of the industry players through the Gateway Transportation Forum, for example, to engage with them on this. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, that's great, because I do think that, I said it in my comments for Transport 2050, there's so much innovation happening, and there's so much, it's changing rapidly. And I think, we have just approved this very bold vision for the future. And I think that the faster we can leverage those opportunities, pilot, what have you, and work with them, the faster we're going to meet the urgency, because we're, as the been said, we can't do this on our own. And so I think there's some great opportunities there. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Kennedy Stewart.
Thanks. I have two questions. The first is what we can do here at TransLink, and then the second is on Metro and the province. So firstly, if we're going to hit our 2030 goals, what is the most pivotal action or actions that we need to take right now? Can you give us some suggestions?
Well, I think that that's a big question that could have quite a big answer. So I will keep it short. On the one hand, I think we've laid out quite a lot of key actions and statements in Transport 2050 to reduce reliance on personal vehicles and shift people to walking and cycling and transit. And the scope of this work is to take those big things and detail those out in much more specific ways. But as Caitlin noted, while we are on a very aggressive transition to electric vehicles in the province, the nature of this urgency is so soon that the path we're on is electric vehicles are not going to get us there to reducing our GHG emissions from transportation by 65%. So we do need to dramatically reduce the amount of vehicle kilometers traveled overall in the region, and there's different ways to get there.
Yeah, so it's 2022. And this is a 2030 target, and I think we need to be pretty upfront with the things we have to consider and either embrace them or not. So statements are great and targets are great, and I think we're focusing on where the reductions have to come, but we need some policy tools for us to consider shortly. I know it's just not on us though. So we of course are getting targets as well from Metro and the province, but what are the things they can do? Like what can they do to help us with hit our targets?
I think you speak to a very good point. I mean, regulatory tools are absolutely going to be very important in this. This can't be only a incentive side or supply side approach, although incentives are really critical as well to reduce the amount of driving. So this is the very kinds of, you're right. I mean, it's a very, very daunting timeline with a very daunting reduction target. And these are the very types of things that we will be working quickly on and coming back with really this kinds of specific things that we think are needed from differing levels of government.
It does feel like we're ahead on this. What are Metro and the province's timelines? When are we going to know, like, these all have to mesh together? Are there any details on what urgency they're feeling here, or when we can expect to see actions from them?
Maybe Andrew or Caitlin, you can speak in a little bit more detail to those timelines. They are at the table with us, as we know that we can't do this in isolation of both Metro Vancouver and the province.
Sure, I could speak just briefly to the province in their update to the Clean BC Roadmap to 2030. They committed to producing a provincial-wide clean transportation plan by 2023. So as essentially a subset of the Clean BC Roadmap they just released, they're going to do some more detailed work specifically on-road GHG reduction. So the same scope that we're talking about here, also over the next year, essentially by 2023. So the timing on that actually works quite well. It allows, if the region and the Mayor's Council and board are able to focus some attention on this, the province will be doing likewise. At the Metro Vancouver board table, you should be seeing something coming in the next month or two from Metro Vancouver staff, also proposing to make this the focus of their work program, the Air Quality and Climate team, over the next year. So that at a staff level, we've been having conversations about making sure that all three agencies are making this a priority, that we're working in alignment over the coming year.
Okay, thanks. 2023, though, that's only 7 years, and I look at the percentage decreases. I mean, it is going to be the longer we leave it, the bigger shock it's going to be to folks. And so we owe it to them to get things rolling as fast as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Councillor Cameron.
Well, I'm going to make 3 points, and I kind of riffing on what Mayor Stewart was just talking about on a similar topic. As of last year, the top 5 selling cars in Canada were the Ford F-Series, the Ram pickup, the Toyota RAV4, the GMC Sierra pickup, and the Chevy Silverado. This is 2021. These are cars that are going to be on the road for the next 15, 20 years. As long as we are selling those kind of cars, which still, even though they're getting more efficient, are still totally inefficient, and in most cases, massive overkill, there's no way we are tinkering around the edges, as long as those are the sort of 5 highest selling cars in Canada. You know, I remember the meeting a couple years ago when we were talking at TransLink about whether we should, you know, buying the next tranche of diesel buses, and I believe it was someone around the table said, you know, why are we doing this? This is nuts. We're buying diesel buses that are going to be on the road for the next 20, 25 years. And that spurred an entire rethinking of our electric vehicle fleet policy and much more emphasis on buying electric buses in the emerging technology. So that's what we did at TransLink to react. But until we make it less attractive to purchase massively inefficient vehicles and drive them a lot, people will continue to drive massively inefficient vehicles a lot, and we won't make our emissions targets. So, you know, there's a carrot and there's a stick. We obviously have to provide alternatives for people to get around the region, and this is what we're in the business of doing and what we're trying to do with Transport 2050. But you know, nobody wants to talk about it, but the number one thing we could do in the short term to change driving habits is, of course, mobility pricing. And nobody wants to talk about it because it's politically toxic, but it is the most effective tool we could put in place to change people's where they live and their driving habits and their mobility habits. So we can talk about all these things, but if we take some of the most effective tools off the table and we ignore some of the biggest problems, it's going to be difficult to reach our targets. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is, when I read this report, I just kept thinking, really what this is about is land use and land use policy. And ultimately, if we can't really make a functioning, efficient, low emission region unless we can create communities that allow people to live locally more. We just can't. We have to change the way we're living, and that has to do with development powers. And I'm not sitting at the metro table with the mayors, but you know, I know that's a big part of what they're talking about in terms of the regional growth strategy and the updates to that. So I mean, TransLink has to do we have to do what we can at TransLink, but if we're truly going to live in a more a climate-friendly future, it's going to have to take more than the transit system. It's really going to have to change the way we're living and the way we've developed around and use land around the region. We can focus on the short-term goals, but we have to be talking about city building as a larger piece.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Andy Ross.
Thank you. Just building on Councillor Cameron's comments a little bit there, when we look just at TransLink itself, there's sort of the two aspects is what can we do internally with our own organization? I've got a couple of comments on that. And then what can we do to assist rather than really lead the other ones? And I'm just thinking we're hopefully spending billions of dollars on new infrastructure over the next little while in conjunction with the province on our expansions on the SkyTrains, but the infrastructure is supporting that as well. Obviously, the fleet is our biggest concern at TransLink, but I'm just wondering at some point, are we doing the second largest GHG emitters in metro is buildings? And I'd just like to know that we're conscious in designing our future infrastructure that we either build or facilitate to build is being built to the greatest standards possible for GHG reductions. So that's one part of it. And the other thing I know we've mused about in some of our committee meetings is this something we as TransLink and in cooperation with Metro Vancouver can do to facilitate this transition to the use of electric vehicles? And there's a couple of things that come to mind there is, can we either one, initiate a charging system for convenience or partner with another party to mitigate some of the range hesitancy and availability of just being able to fuel your electric vehicle up. Exploring some of those issues. But I think, again, to Councillor Cameron's there, when we look at some of the cities around the world and the actions they've taken in the European cities that have actually banned or are in the process of banning diesel or gasoline powered vehicles. We've talked around this, but not specifically. That could be in conjunction with a charge or an outright ban. But those kind of things are difficult to talk about. But I think unless those big, bold actions are talked about, and with Mayor Stewart's, this is a very, very ambitious program in a very short timeline, and we need to be aggressive in getting there. So I think we really, need to look outside of the box, look to see what we can do, and it will need the cooperation between all of Metro and the province to initiate those big changes. I just feel that the dates keep getting pushed out there, and everybody likes the target, but don't like the hard decisions to make. So explore a bit more what TransLink itself could do to facilitate, because a lot of our fleet, we are going to move over. SkyTrain and stuff are electric. What can we do in the short term to hit that little gap we've got even on our own target, that 78% of extra we've got to find? So I throw that out. I don't necessarily need an answer now, but just some reassurances that our infrastructure building is as GHG free or as neutral as it can be would be a start in a small part of that small percentage.
Thank you for the question, Andy. And if I could defer to Ralph Nielsen to speak about our facilities and what we're doing, but in terms of supporting people's transition to electric vehicles, and as you noted, range anxiety, I definitely think that there's things that TransLink can be doing in coordination with BC Hydro and other partners, for example, looking into things like supporting installation of charging infrastructure, supporting other regulatory changes as well. But I think Ralph is still on the call.
I'm here, Sarah. Yes, so good question, Andy. On the facility side, 2 years ago, we developed a renewable facilities energy plan, which we're going to now change into a net zero facilities energy plan. And we're looking at all of our major projects, both in terms of getting to net zero as well as climate resilience. So plans are already underway within engineering and our policy and planning folks to make sure that we're on that path to net zero and closing that additional gap, even on our facilities, even though that we know our major emissions are associated with the fleet. So excellent question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Brody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we're talking about coordination of the various parties, something Sarah Ross just said really struck me. What about the role of all the cities? And the example that was given was the EV charging stations. Those are going to come in predominantly through the actions of the cities. And is TransLink assuming that by including Metro Vancouver that you're including the cities? Because Metro Vancouver is not regional government except in a very defined and focused way. So that's my first point. The second thing, we talk about the movement of freight. And if you're talking about coordination, what about the role of the port? It seems to me that I think the port came out with a plan to take the oldest trucks off the road or something, but they don't seem to want to go to round-the-clock operations. They don't seem to want to encourage short sea shipping, various things that will reduce the level of emissions and take their heavy duty vehicles off the road. So I just think TransLink staff can reflect on that any way they wish, or just take that as a comment.
Thank you, Mayor Brody. Very excellent point about the role of the cities. And in fact, this majority of transportation infrastructure in this region is under the control of the cities, in that most of the road space The municipalities are the road authority. And, we need to look very, very seriously at that road space and how we allocate that as one of the tools towards shifting behavior, and making transit the most convenient choice and making cycling and walking. The reality is people make the best choice for them every day into what mode they're going to choose, as they should. And as the region and cities, we have to be putting the conditions in place such that transit and cycling and walking are the best choice much, much, much more frequently than driving is. So I think that the cities have to absolutely be very at the table and actively involved through that process. I will pass it to Andrew to speak briefly about your question on freight and the role of the port. Andrew, you're on mute.
Apologies, thank you. I believe in a previous conversation on this topic, Sarah Clark, board member Clark, referenced that the port had to actually scale back their ambitions somewhat because of the lack of ambitions to have stronger emissions requirements because of the lack of availability of vehicles in that fleet, and it's just taking them a bit longer, I think, to scale up with those medium and heavy duty vehicles to zero emissions or lower emissions. But that being said, that is something still very much on our work program, and we've got good working relationships with the port on this file as well. I don't think it's going to be our focus for this year. We're really emphasizing that key question of how do we reduce driving from the 75% of the vehicles that are still going to be on the road that are internal combustion engine driven in 2030. That's where the lion's share of the emissions still lie, and where we think the highest potential is to actually reduce emissions in a short time frame. But that being said, working with the port is still a really critical thing for us to continue. So thanks for that comment.
Thank you. Mayor Richard Stewart.
Thank you. And I echo comments of a few that have said that we have a role, but almost so many of the decisions related to the carbon emissions in our region, we either can't influence or are being influenced by other forces in the wrong direction. So our household has 2 electric vehicles, 2 electric assist bicycles. I commute every day by bicycle, but our electric bill is higher because I opt to charge my car at home, and therefore I pay a premium on electricity. And BC Hydro actually says that we're trying to encourage conservation. So if you use less energy in your home, you'll pay us a lower rate. Those kinds of perceptions, the public understands the perceptions, and I think trying to get folks off of their F-350 pickup truck into some carbon or low emission vehicles, we have to convince them that we're all standing behind them on that decision, rather than yeah, you won't pay for gas anymore, but you pay more for your electricity. This is we need to get to a point where everybody's rowing in the same direction. I have lots of other comments, but I know others do too.
Thank you. Sarah Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Cote. I just wanted to respond on the talking about the higher selling vehicles being a lot of trucks. And while some people will, there aren't the options yet for people, as was pointed out. We also can, so I think that people that do have trucks, a lot of people need them or want them for things that they do in their lives. And as more available options come available, they will switch to those lower emission versions. But I think as a group, we also can't ignore that there's functions for these larger vehicles as well. Maybe not for someone living right downtown that can walk everywhere, but these vehicles do have a function, and they are slowly coming on market. They are going to come on the market at a very high price. So the average person will not be able to afford the $100,000 electric F-150. But hopefully, as things, as technology progresses for both light duty trucks and heavier duty trucks, we can make those transitions. I just, we talked about this before. I just don't see the technologies coming on as quickly as what we would hope in the plan. And I don't see the uses of those vehicles necessarily going away as we would need to reach these emission goals. I do think we have to keep in mind there are functions for these types of vehicles, not necessarily the options yet.
Thank you. Mayor Richard Stewart again.
I'll ask Sarah, do we have a role perhaps as TransLink, as Mayor's Council, in trying to suggest to BC Hydro and their regulator that punishing people who have electric cars by charging them a higher rate for their electricity is counterproductive?
Well, I think that can be expanded upon in the work we're doing there. I don't know if staff have any reflections, but maybe I'm just going to go to Mayor Little.
Well, I was just going to say, SFU just released a report about the very challenges BC Hydro is facing. Again, we haven't looked at the upstream challenges, both of generation and transmission in this province. And if we want to be able to make the transition over to electric vehicles, we desperately need to address the issue of transmission and generation, or we're going to have brownouts. And so if they are, if they're charging peak period rates or strategic rates in order to be able to change behavior, it needs to recognize the limited supply of electricity in our community. And if people can push to off-peak hours, and perhaps we can charge in those instances, maybe we can avoid the really regrettable outcome, which is that we're going to have to buy electricity from jurisdictions that don't have nearly as clean sources as the province of BC does. And so that is a serious challenge for us as we approach 2030 and the removal of ICE vehicles from the retail fleet.
Okay, thank you. Well, I really appreciate this really good discussion that we've had. I think this report is quite sobering in that it really highlights the slow progress we've made so far and the immense challenges ahead of us if we are to achieve the targets that we have set and that we know we need to accomplish to avoid the very serious and negative impacts that the climate emergency is facing us. I know reading these reports, at first blush, I think they can be a bit discouraging because it almost seems overwhelming, too complex, and involving too many stakeholders and partners there. But I think we do need to find our inspiration and our abilities to kind of implement and take actions where we have the ability to be able to do that. I've gotten to know everyone on these little boxes or screens over the years, and I know everyone cares very deeply and recognize this is the issue of our time that we need to work our way through. And we have found good opportunities to find consensus in building bold plans and bold targets, and those are important and necessary first steps because they focus on the action we need to do. But we need to figure out how do we get to the bold implementation that we know actually has to connect the dots here. We know there are limitations. There's limits to what local governments are going to be able to achieve. There's going to have to be other partners. There's going to have to be external factors that are completely out of our control. But I think from our perspective, we need to find inspiration on the actions that are in our control, are under our abilities, and find that path forward. So I appreciate the work that TransLink staff have done to highlight the complex and challenges that we have to do, but also give us that roadmap to lead us towards the ultimate actions that we know we have to get to. So with that, I will look for a motion to receive this report. Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I think this is probably the largest online Zoom meeting I've ever chaired. Quite daunting, but really appreciate everyone's participation and dialogue with the work we've worked through. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.